Garfield is a comic strip that's been going on for close to a half century at this point, which is kind of a long time. It's a comic that I feel like gets a lot of hate on the internet, and I don't really understand why. It's far from peak humor, but there actually are plenty of funny strips. I don't know, I just kind of set my expectations when I read a Garfield comic. I enjoy it because I know what to expect, but I also understand that it's not the funniest thing ever. There are many funnier things, but you can still enjoy it if you go into it knowing what to expect. So with that said, I decided to rank every single Garfield comic. Well, by year. So in this video, it's going to be the part 1 of a series that ranks each Garfield comic within the year they were released. So this video will be covering every comic from 1978, the debut year. So that's every comic from June 19th to December 31st of 1978. I'm not really going to be analyzing these comics very much, and within a given tier, some of the comics could probably be rearranged at any given day. So this is going to be more about classifying them by tier, but I still will organize them within each tier to give a proper ranking. So let's briefly go over what each tier means for the comics. The F tier ones are the ones that I either don't understand the joke or I just don't like. D tier are the ones that are, certainly comics of all time. C tier are okay jokes. B tier jokes are the ones that are good, but not that great. A tier are the ones that make me exhale from a nostril, and S tier ones are the ones that I actually laughed at. So, with all that said, let's get into the unfortunate F tiers of the very first year of Garfield's run. I feel like this Garfield comic might slightly be racist, but I'm not 100% sure. Either way, not really funny. Running shoes make people go faster. Epic funny joke. Yay. I feel like the colors of this comic kind of ruined it for me with the yellow sploosh, implying that the toilet water is not exactly clean. John, flush your toilet when you're done using it. There's a reason why Garfield rarely makes political jokes, and, this being one of them. I'm sure there's some obscure pop culture reference here that I'm missing, but this comic is getting close to 50 years old. I just don't get it. I don't eat Milk Duds on the account that I don't like raisins, but I don't remember them being that sticky, so, I don't know. F tier for mentioning Milk Duds. I don't know what curdled kitty munchies are like, but, Garfield saying he hates summer is fine and all, but this was made near the end of September. This is not summer. What the heck are you doing, Jim Davis? Maybe this is just something I don't understand because I've never watched the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse show, but I don't know what Garfield means when he says, shake it a net. It certainly is a joke, I guess. Garfield's tolerance of cat food always fluctuates between being perfectly fine with it and not liking it at all. Whatever on this one. Can't believe Garfield would harass a Girl Scout SMH. We need to cancel this guy. I don't really get why Garfield has a problem with Labor Day, given the fact that he's a lazy cat. I feel like he'd like a day kind of dedicated to that and not working, but, go off, I guess? This is one of those jokes that's been done several times on Garfield, but it's just not really that entertaining. Those darn icy sandboxes, huh, Garfield? That sure is relatable. I've never heard the thing that Garfield is really referencing here, so, it exists. The worst Sunday comic, and it's all about Garfield not wanting to take his vitamin pill. I'm sure it's more relatable to actual cat owners, but it's just not as entertaining as a comic to me. I'm really not sure what the joke was supposed to be here. He accidentally lost John's watch? Hilarious, I guess. It sure is a joke about how cats can mess with their owners. Garfield describes how he is going to get to the floor from the window. Funny joke, I think. The first, but certainly not the last time that John thinks this. It never goes through. When you least expect it, John, expect it. Cats shed, and that is the joke. As someone who has only heard about the struggles of owning a cat, I'm sure this would be more relatable if I did, but I don't, so it's not. This early design of Garfield looks pretty ridiculous when he's running like that, doesn't he? One of the many comics that brings up the good question of how much money John makes given Garfield's behaviors. From my friends who have cats, they have told me that this is very accurate. Honestly, I don't get why Garfield's complaining about this one. Looks pretty comfortable to me. If I had a pet sit in a plate of food, I would probably crash out. Pets do be loving human food, though. This is one of the few comics that references John's cartoonist job and shows him at work. Pour one out for one of the many bathroom scales that Garfield will destroy over the years. John's fork almost looks like a garden rake in this one. What the heck's up with that? Also, he doesn't have any lasagna on his plate, so I guess he wasn't gonna eat any anyway. That's pet abuse, Garfield, and we don't do that in this house. Man, this comic strip is lame. I have no idea what double knit curtains are, but rip Garfield. I have no idea if this comic is meant to be a knock against whoever the heck Bridget Bardot is, or just a joke about these two not being able to stay up late. Who knows? I guess this was before Liz was officially introduced as Garfield's veterinarian. Instead, we have what basically looks like Lyman doing the examination. Honestly, pretty relatable, but also not really that funny. Me when the floor is cold on a weekend day and I don't want to get out of bed yet. While Garfield has many points up on Odie, Odie still has a chance to get his licks in occasionally. Oh, Garfield, haven't you learned by now? The only winning move is not to play. This is both a win for Garfield's tail and also a win for John's back. That chair looked really uncomfortable. You know what, Garfield has a point. Dogs are a plague onto the fire hydrants of our nation. How could they? I think that mailman is straight up just stupid. I mean, really? You're gonna think that's John? Come on. I know it's a toothpick, but in the second panel, it almost looks like Garfield is grabbing his own thought bubble. Kinda weird. Garfield, you jerk, that's property damage. Come on. Okay, but real talk. Who the hell names their cat Mud Fence? You suck if you name your cat Mud Fence. I feel like the Incredible Hulk would relate to Garfield on this one. To be fair to Garfield here, I have also laughed to the point where I felt like I was gonna throw up, and it sucked. I like how this comic implies that John knows this from personal experience. How did John not notice Garfield scratching his best friend's leg when he was right there? Is he stupid? Are there ferns named after a bunch of cities, or is Garfield just making something up when he says Boston Fern? Just go to the bathroom faster, Garfield. SMH. Sounds like a skill issue to me. Our first look into the ever-famous Garfield workout. Making the Weight Watchers 10 Most Wanted list as a cat has got to be a pretty big achievement. I feel like Garfield should be proud of that one. Don't feel too bad, John. Garfield's repair skill is just a higher level than yours. Come on now, John. Everybody knows college football isn't played only on Saturdays. I don't know who Lossie is, but I love that expression on Garfield's face. The one bit of serotonin that this comic gave me is when it reminded me of Koseki Bijou of Hololive English. Considering he's grabbing Odie by the neck, does this count as animal abuse on Lyman's behalf? This cute Garfield design is pretty cursed. Now introducing the short-lived character of Lyman, John's friend who eventually disappeared from the strip. Honestly, I'm surprised that Garfield didn't just drink the soup. I guess he doesn't care much for the taste. Come on, Lyman, this isn't anything to cry about. Get it together, man. If Garfield was supposed to be like hopping around, the comic did not illustrate that very well. Or maybe this is just like a fat joke, I'm not exactly sure. I wonder if this has ever happened to a cat owner where a cat tries to get in the bath with you. I don't know. Garfield's line at the end of this comic feels kind of like a non sequitur compared to the comic that just came before it, or maybe I'm misunderstanding something. John's head kind of looks squished in the third panel. A little bit weird. I wonder how accurate this really is to cats. Honestly, I have no idea. I feel like this generally sums up Garfield's character in a nutshell. Though John says happy birthday on 6/20, we of course know that his actual birthday is the 19th of June, and this is just being done, I guess, a day late since the very first comic strip still had to introduce the characters, so, you know, that's cool. Sorry, Garfield, but hashtag not all cats are like this. This is basically the equivalent of when the Black Knight from Monty Python and the Holy Grail says, "'Tis but a flesh wound," when like all 4 of his limbs are chopped off. I wonder how Garfield isn't tipping over the fishbowl by leaning on it like that. You know, Garfield, it could have been a lot worse. You could have been paired with a much smarter dog who didn't like you. Nice save, Garfield. Nice save. I just love the goofy way that early Garfield is drawn. That's what makes me enjoy this one. That must have been one heck of a purr if John gets startled like that. John asks this, yet he continues to buy plants over the years no matter how often Garfield destroys them. I guess he just likes them. I gotta say, I cannot recommend eating the briquettes. It just sounds like a bad idea. I mean, I feel like an easier way to tell would just be to look at them, because usually cat and dog treats have different designs, but what do I know? Proof that some animals just act sick for the sake of attention. Despite what John says here, this is going to be far from the last time that he takes Garfield to the store. One rule of thumb about Garfield is that whether or not John seems to understand what Garfield says depends on if it's funnier if he does or does not understand his cat. This is a scenario where it's funnier if he doesn't know, I guess. I wonder how many Christmas ornaments Garfield has broken over the years. I wonder why John never uses this essence of lasagna thing again, or maybe he does and we just don't know about it. Honestly, the nap attack gag that Garfield has, I think is pretty funny sometimes. The introduction of Garfield's favorite teddy bear, Pookie. So whenever anyone says that online these days, this is what I think of. Thanks, Garfield. What did you think was going to happen, Rosa Quartz? Surprisingly, this is not the only time that Garfield gets caught in a window blind. According to Jim Davis, Odie is named after a character from a different comic strip he did in college named Odie the Village Idiot. Just in case you were curious. Well, hey, the universe gave Lyman an answer. Good for him. A nice, fairly wholesome comic strip. Also, do you think Garfield's form is anywhere close to like that golden spiral ratio thing? I don't know, just something I thought of while looking at this one. Garfield kind of has a point here, although honestly, very few cats that I know actively hunt mice unless they're just doing it for fun. I just love the silly way Garfield is drawn in this one. It's just pretty funny. Another stake taken by the master of trickery, Garfield the cat. Surprisingly, not the last time that John would make this exact mistake. Kinda feel like the newspaper maybe should have blocked it, but maybe the perspective is just off. Did John just fall asleep in his regular shirt, or is this supposed to be like a nap in the middle of the day that he's taking? Rookie mistake, John. Never take your eyes off the food. While I don't necessarily agree that lasagna is the best food ever, it's pretty darn good and can be made a bunch of ways. I get it, Garfield. While beware of dog signs are far more common, I feel like seeing a beware of cat sign still wouldn't, put me off very much. If I start seeing like beware of hamster, then I'm gonna start freaking out. Glad to see Garfield is enjoying himself, even if it's at the expense of a mailman. Despite Garfield's later claims of not being able to spell, clearly he knows how to spell some words. Honestly, I don't know why John's freaking out here. Pets have toys like that all the time. I'm not sure what its problem is. I guess with this comic, we can officially confirm that unlike some people on the internet, Garfield is not in defeat. Odie's barking power is pretty crazy if he can fling John and Garfield and the table halfway across the room against the wall. While the 13th Amendment does not apply to dogs, this is still kind of an uncool moment from Garfield. Come on. While this is the very first comic that depicts John's old neighbors, I believe the lady is later called Reba, so just something I thought about. I love how just completely done John looks in this comic strip. He's been through the ringer before. Average cat trying to decide whether or not they want to go in or out be like. Despite what Garfield says here, I can't imagine that's going to be fun when it starts to come out. Remember, Garfield, only a Sith deals in absolutes. Nice to know that Garfield clearly cares about the environment. What the heck even is a cat burger? Is it just like cat food compressed into a burger? Honestly, I have no idea. I'm sure you'll be utterly flabbergasted to learn that Garfield does neither of these things going into his future. Looks like Garfield might be this world's one and only Spider-Man. See, this is what I was talking about with the Labor Day comic. Garfield does enjoy time off. I'm not sure why it was different there. The 6th panel of this comic almost makes it look like John is standing in front of a Japanese flag. I guess this is why cats like to knock things off tables. Some of the most exercise we see Garfield doing in a single comic strip here. Another comic where Garfield is strangely active in it, and that picture of him panting is always a little bit weird. Curiosity may have not killed the cat, but it certainly shaved it. I love how dramatic Garfield gets over literally just a silly little guy like Odie. John's slow uptake on obvious things is part of what makes him a funny character. A strip that makes good use out of how comic logic works. I like it. In today's strip, Garfield understands why dogs are man's best friend and cats are not. Despite how this comic is meant to make you think otherwise, Garfield is actually much sweeter than probably some cats would be towards other dogs. Garfield just looks so goofy doing his staring here. I love that. Rip to the vet, I certainly would not want to be him. Clearly, Garfield has never mastered the art of the tablecloth trick. So, nap attacks are basically just violent narcolepsy, right? Based on John's words here, I guess that makes every time Garfield eats lasagna, him being a cannibal? That's interesting. From what I've heard of other cat owners, this is also 100% accurate. Garfield can run up walls and ceilings, confirmed. He really is that fast. For a cat as fat as Garfield, he is surprisingly agile as shown here. I don't know how the hell Garfield fit in that vase, but that's pretty damn impressive, I will say. Once again, we're seeing the sheer power of Odie's bark. This was the comic strip where Odie learned that if he was going to be able to stand around here, he'd have to learn to bark a lot better than that. The one that started it all back on June 19th of 1978. It's not too deep, but this brief 3-panel comic tells us enough of what we need to know going into the comic strip that is Garfield. Garfield's submission for begging for food any percent speedrun. I wonder if cats have a world record progression video for how fast you can scratch a scratching post. Sorry, Garfield machine broke. Understandable, have a great day. I know the pain, Garfield. I definitely know the pain. While I've never been sunburned this bad, I have been sunburned before, and yeah, it definitely sucks. If John seriously thought this was going to work long term, he really is a ding-a-ling. Garfield reinvents walking around in his bed a few different times during the strip, and I guess this was the first encounter with it. This is one of the many comics that proves that, regardless of how much Garfield may complain about Odie, he really does actually like him. R.I.P. to Hondo the Puppet, he was a real one. I wonder if this was a real letter that Jim Davis received or one that he made up. Either way, that's kinda brutal, Garfield. A weirdly dark joke for Garfield to attempt to, do that when John threatens to declaw him. Don't worry, Garfield, I'm sure you'll get out of this one soon enough. You know what, Garfield, I completely agree with you. 6 a.m. is a great time to be asleep. Further proof that Garfield is really the one in control of this household. The concept of trees barking like dogs is honestly pretty terrifying. I really don't think Garfield would actually want that. How will you ever survive, Garfield? That's a good question. The better question is, how did you learn how to do all that stuff? Really. Honestly, Garfield was completely right to do this. When you're talking about a movie, don't spoil it for someone watching it for the very first time. Come on, John. Garfield hates a great number of things, and static electricity is one of them. Although it does make him look pretty goofy. Come on, John, you should know better. Thursday's lasagna day. Everybody knows that. Garfield's loves for food and sleep constantly fight for dominance in his head. Remember the comic strip earlier where Garfield was talking about how turtles have it great? Yeah, well, this was the comic that came before it, and I like it a little bit more. This begins the tradition of most Christmas comics for Garfield being pretty wholesome, and I appreciate that. And according to many people on the internet, you're also not known for your comedy, Garfield. Poor Pookie, it's not his fault that John has PTSD from Garfield and Odie always trying to steal his food. And you didn't even hit the fly, Garfield. Come on. You should have better aim than that. Lasagna being part of Garfield's blood is one of those things that actually does get brought up a few times during the strip. I really don't know how it works, but what's really important is that Garfield looks funny when walking in these early strips. I love it. And this, Garfield, is why you always tilt the jar to let it come rolling out instead of trying to reach down there and get it. I hope you learned something from this encounter. Well, excuse me, princess. This is what we call a rare moment of candor, where John realizes that what he's saying is completely ridiculous to his cat. I like those moments where Garfield literally just freezes completely in time. I don't know, it's just kind of ridiculous. Every time I see this comic, I think of the edited version where Garfield destroys his own soul with Soul Calibur and John asks him why he did it for some reason. Instant dramatic irony, and ripped to Garfield's bones. That must have hurt. Whoever thought a nap attack could hurt? Well, clearly not Garfield, at least not until this moment. Garfield's thoughts being stuffed up is a brilliant use of fourth wall breaking. I love it. Although later comics would show that John lives in the middle of a neighborhood, this one seems to show him in the middle of nowhere. Maybe the whole neighborhood sprung up around his house or something, I don't know. Just like Odie's bark, Garfield's sneeze has a lot of power behind it. Even just a few months into knowing Odie, Garfield apparently already has him trained. I really don't know what John expected from this. Garfield was the president of the Kitty Drama Club back in Cat High School for a reason, Garfield may never change, but that's part of what we love about him. I support it. I love how Garfield gets mad about it being too easy. I don't know, I just find that really funny. Garfield's goofy expression when he asks for help, yeah, that is peak old school art style Garfield. I love that. The biggest bungle in all of sports history is never fully reporting the outcome of this match. What's more impressive than Garfield surviving falling straight onto a hot grill like this is the fact that he was balancing on a plastic lawn chair at the beginning. Starting out our S tier, we have the fact that Santa deniers are now in shambles. I love that he's just in Garfield. Just officially, it's canon, he's there. What makes me appreciate this entry a little bit more is just the goofy imagery of watching Garfield try to walk with sunburn. I don't know, I just kinda love it. What can I say? I just love Garfield looking completely ridiculous like this. It's just great. While I may have no idea who Tom Seaver is, the reason that I put this one all the way up in 11th place is simple. I just love the imagery of Garfield somehow catching the flower pot and immediately throwing it back and scoring a bullseye on that guy's head. What a great comic. Once again, the power of cartoon logic saved Garfield, cause man, that sure looked painful. Remember kids, it's never cool to do what Garfield attempts to do in this comic strip. Don't do it. While I would love to scold Lyman for doing this to John, I have to admit it's something that I would definitely do to my friends if I had the chance. You know you're in either a bad neighborhood or a neighborhood with bad animals if you have to wear a friggin' suit of armor to deliver the dang mail. A rare instance of Garfield swearing, and I kinda love it. While it could never quite live up to the fame of its predecessor, I still quite like this comic strip and just how silly it is. Seeing Lyman join the two pets in begging for food is honestly pretty funny. I get why John is annoyed, but this is just... it's just a great comic, I love it. Third place belongs to probably the most ridiculous drawing of old school Garfield. That third panel, it just gives me life every time I look at it. I love how somehow Garfield and Oni managed to instantly make a phone ring when John was standing right there, get over to it, and then continue fighting just to troll him over the phone. I don't know, I just love how they're that dedicated to their fight. Good job, guys. Where tube cat? Ah man, this comic strip, July 27th of 1978. Oh, it lives on in infamy. But you know what? Memes aside, I just love the complete ridiculousness of it. And yes, the memes do help. But yeah, this one, it's gonna be my pick for many reasons for the #1 Garfield comic of 1978, the debut year. So how was our very first year? It was alright. It wasn't exactly the greatest debut year a comic strip could have, but it was still pretty good. It had a bunch of pretty great ones near the top, and the majority of the jokes were at least okay. I can see why the comic strip caught on even all the way back in 1978. It's a great comic strip, and its best years are still ahead of it at this point. I don't know what my favorite year will be going forward, but that'll be part of the fun of this series. You know, seeing which year has some of the better comics and which ones have some of the worst ones. But all that said, I look forward to it, and I hope you do too in all my future videos ranking the future years of Garfield's comics. So I hope you stick around for that. Thank you for watching.